Before we take a nosedive and immerse ourselves in the details of the question, it always helps to take a step back and first look at the structure of the question. Right? So be calm, collected, look at the structure of the question. It will give you some idea, it will give you some perspective on how the question has to be approached. This takes maybe 20 to 30 seconds, but it saves you a lot of time and definitely saves you a lot of frustration. Let's have a look at the structure of this question. As you can see, there is someone who says something, then there is someone else who says something. Now, this applies to two questions, question number 3 and question number 4, right? Let's have a look at the question stem of question 3 and question 4, and that gives us an idea of how we should be reading this part here, right? Because there are only two questions that we have to answer. If we were doing that in a question set where there were maybe 6 questions or sometimes 7 questions, let's say sometimes you have a set that applies from question number 1 to question number 6. Now, that might be a little hard to remember, so you might want to first read this before reading these. But here you have only 2 questions, right? And therefore, reading these is perhaps a good idea because it gives you some perspective. So let's have a look at what we have in these 2 questions. It says, which one of the following is a point at issue between these two? Which means, which is the point of their disagreement or dispute? Okay, that tells us that there is a dispute between these two. There's a disagreement between these two in here. We have to identify as to what that point is. Okay, that gives us some perspective. It gives us some direction. Let's look at question number 4. Dr. T's response to Dr. L uses which one of the following argumentative strategies? Which means that we know for sure that Dr. T is responding to Dr. L. You might have noticed that I'm not looking at the names of the doctors because that doesn't matter. In fact, I don't even need to call them Dr. L or Dr. T. I can just call them T and L. It makes it simpler for us because there's lesser information that we deal with. But what this question tells us is that T is responding to L, you see, because it says it's a response. And then there is also an argumentative strategy that he's using. We just have to identify as to what that is. So now we pretty much know as to what is contained here even without reading it. And we must have invested maybe 20 seconds on this. These are well spent 20 seconds. With this background, I think we are now in a position to have a look at what these two gentlemen or ladies are saying. Again, when you're reading this, I would urge you to first again spend another 10 seconds to read both of these and get an idea of what is contained in this. Now, skimming is not something that you should do for a minute, but you can definitely skim for 10 seconds because when you look at something for even 5 to 10 seconds, there is some information that you get from it. And don't keep your expectations very high. After all, you're just investing 10 seconds. Just try to get an idea of what is happening in here. Okay, so we'll do that first. What we'll do first is that we'll try to first read these and get a brief idea of what is happening. You will realize that even that helps us a lot. So let me just call the first person L, let me call the second person T, because more the details, the tougher it gets. So in fact, in your head, this is how you should blacken it out, right? Make things simple, because otherwise we tend to want to articulate the names, and not every name is so easy for us to articulate. Things are not always familiar, so you just make it small and make it familiar for yourself, for your own comfort, for solving the question. Because as you might realize, these details are not critical to the solutions of our questions. Okay, so L says that as anthropologists, we are committed to learning about cultures without intervening in the lives of the people in those cultures. For this reason, we should observe people passively by means of videos and sound recordings rather than conducting interviews with these people. One of the first things that I should tell you is about argumentation structure. As you can see, whatever follows a word like for this reason, or maybe whatever follows so, or maybe therefore, or maybe hence, and so on, you know that whatever follows this is the conclusion, right? So for example, if I say that I am hungry, so I ate the chapati. I was hungry, For this reason, I ate 2 chapatis. I am hungry. Hence, I ate the entire loaf of bread. What you understand is that you can recognize the conclusion by looking at some words. So what you see here is that for this reason tells you what the conclusion of L is. And before that, it gives you a bit of what his idea is. His idea is that you want to learn about cultures without intervening in the lives of the people in those cultures. Now, what T says is, whereas your aim is admirable, your method is misguided. This is very important. This line gives us a lot of details. If you remember, question number 3 was asking us as to what the point of issue is, which means where is the disagreement. As you can see, T agrees with the aim of L. So if L has suggested an aim, he agrees with it because he says the aim is admirable. However, there is some disagreement as far as the method of L is concerned. I hope you understand this point. The difference lies in the method that L has. Okay? So we know that when we are going and looking at question number 3, as I always say, comprehension is the ability to anticipate. So we are looking at the option that talks about the method of L. So we're looking at the option wherein T is disagreeing with the method of L. So you see, we already know as to what our answer perhaps is. We look at it, we might realize that we need to see something more, but we have a sense of anticipation. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and look at what T is saying, what more he's saying. After all, the mere presence of video cameras and recording devices invariably constitutes an intervention into the lives of people being filmed or recorded. So now if you look at what L has said here, what perhaps is the aim of L? Perhaps you can understand that the aim of L is that you need to learn about a culture without intervention, right? That is the aim of L. And as far as this aim is concerned, T also agrees. But L's suggestion for this, or what L's proposes to do around this is that L says, since we want to learn without intervention, L says that we should use cameras. So according to L, maybe you might want to install CCTV cameras, or you might want to use a mic. Now, according to L, this is not intervention. This is not invasive. But according to T, what he says here, that even the presence of these cameras or these recording devices is intervention. So L says cameras, not intervention. T says camera is intervention. So we now know as to what the point of disagreement is. Also, if we remember question number 4, it asked us as to what the method by which T is arguing is. It's asking us about the method. So let's see what the method is. Like briefly, let's think about what the method is before we even go and look at the options. Because the options will always be tempting if you don't have a bit of an inclination in your head already. If you don't have any anticipation, every option looks tempting. So we'll work for a couple of seconds to see as to what the possible answer might be. Okay. So what is the method here? The method here is that he is telling L that whatever he's proposed. So L says we can use video cameras, and he's saying that, well, the method that you say does not solve your aim, right? So L is saying that L says, hey, I have an aim, and for that aim, I have a technique. What T says is that given your aim, the method that you're using does not fulfill your aim. Now, with this much of a background, let's go and see what the options look like in both of these questions. Now, before we go ahead and look at the solution together, I would recommend that you pause the video for a few seconds. Alright, so now that I hope you've given it an attempt, let's look at the discussion of this question. Look at option number A, the first option. It says whether the aim of anthropologists. Well, as far as the aim is concerned, both of them agree. So there is no disagreement here. I eliminate option A. Let's look at option B. Whether it is less troublesome for anthropologists to conduct interviews. Well, we never saw anything about what is more troublesome or what is not. This is external information. I reject it outrightly. Whether it is possible to observe people passively by means of on-site video and sound recordings. Well, this looks like a possible option because here what it is saying is that is this a point of dispute? Yes, because according to L, it is possible to observe people without intervention. You can observe them passively through videos and sound recording, whereas T does not agree. So this is a point of issue. Looks like a possible answer. Let's go ahead and see if we find any other answers. Option D. Whether video and sound recording devices would be more intrusive in cultures in which they are relatively, well, this is again external information. We don't need to bother ourselves with this much. Now you see, if you've not read the stimulus carefully enough, you wouldn't know as to what goes beyond it. So when you're convinced that and sure of what you've read in the stimulus, then the moment you see something external here, you can eliminate it, right? Then let's look at option E. Whether interviews conducted by anthropologists with people from a particular culture. Well, this makes no mention of culture. It does not speak of cultural differences. So again, we can eliminate option E, and therefore we are quite sure that our answer is option C. Again, like I always say, make sure that you spend time on the stimulus. It will save you time in the options. Let's have a look at question number 4. Again, you may choose to pause the video if you want to and try to solve this question by your own self before you listen to my explanation. Okay, let's look at it option by option. Let's look at option A. It concurs with the conclusion. No, they don't concur with the conclusion, right? And it does not offer evidence in support of the conclusion, so I can just outrightly reject this because there is a difference as far as the conclusion is concerned. How do we identify the conclusion? The conclusion was identified by what follows for this reason. So I now hope you understand the significance of that. So for this reason, it said that you do something. Whatever this something was is the conclusion. Now, as far as this was concerned, there was no concurrence. To concur means to agree. Here, there was a disagreement. So I eliminate option A. Let's look at option B. It charges that the method proposed, though it would succeed in some cases. No. It says that the method is wrong. It does not say that it is successful sometimes and unsuccessful at other times. So I can eliminate option B as well. Then it says it offers new evidence. Let's look at option C. It offers new evidence that supports the conclusion. He does not wish to support the conclusion of Lopez. He is opposing the conclusion and he offers no evidence. He only makes a statement. To offer evidence is to maybe present some statistics, maybe present some research, or to offer some material. He offers no material. He only makes his opinion. So there is no evidence, first. Second, he does not wish to support the conclusion of L. Therefore, I eliminate this as well. Look at option D. It says it discredits L's motivations. No. What is the motivation? The motivation is what he believes. That's what his aim is. That's what he wishes to do. As far as that is concerned, he admires it. T admires the motivation of L. He does not discredit it. Okay? So we again eliminate this. Look at option E. It says it questions the truth of an assumption on which L's argument is based. We know that this is the right answer, but let me spend a minute to tell you as to why this is the right answer. You see, whenever there is an argument, remember that there's something called a premise. You can just think of the premise as one of the initial statements, one of the foundational statements upon which you build your argument. So there's a premise. And then on the basis of the premise, a person makes a conclusion. right? So you identify the conclusion because it'll say so. So for example, if I say that I am hungry, so I stole the bread. The conclusion here, I stole the bread. The premise, I was hungry. Remember that between the premise and the conclusion, there will always be an assumption. But the assumption would not be given to you in the question. That's why it's an assumption, right? An assumption is something that is there, but it's not specifically stated, not expressly stated in the question. And that's why it's an assumption. Now, the premise was that you must not intervene. Because as anthropologists, we try to learn without intervening. Okay. What is the conclusion? So let's use a camera. Now, what is the assumption here? The assumption is that cameras do not cause intervention, right? But this is what L assumed. But T says that no, cameras also cause intervention. So here he is questioning the truth of an assumption. Therefore, E is the correct answer. So I hope that through this exercise you were able to learn something about how to approach such questions on logical reasoning. Thank you so much. God bless you.